Five.
Thank you, Chief of Staff Montgomery. We are now live. Confirm with that. Welcome and good evening to everyone that is joining us for this evening's Discipline Matrix Ad Hoc Committee. We are beginning the meeting. We're actually going to start the meeting at 6:05. We're going to wait to see if any community members or any panelists are going to be joining us. As of right now, it is Acting Captain Hubbard and myself, Chair Garcia Costa. And Chief of Staff, we're going to go ahead and let's turn our cameras off, go on mute to about 6:05, and then we can start at 6:05 sharp, and we'll give a couple of folks to join us that may be in transit. All right, great. Sounds good.
Ready to jump in whenever you are, Chair. No one else has joined as of yet.
All right, let's go ahead at 6:05. Let's go ahead and get started. Looks like it is just you and I, Captain. There was a few things that we were going to revisit from last week, and one of the recurring themes in all of these potential violations that I want to just note that we've been discussing every week has been the consideration of whether to have a class 2 violation for any particular one of these violations. I want to make a particular note of that because it is something that I think within the disciplinary process, the commission, myself as chair, is really interested in continuing to have that tool. And we've been having, when it comes to the actual disciplinary process, to be able to determine whether it's something that is a human mistake, something given because of the context, or also something just procedural versus something that has a lot of malice. And that has led to a lot of interesting discussion as of not wanting to also, in doing that and looking at class 2 considerations, be able to open up a loophole or an out for folks to basically either cover up misconduct, or ways to dodge it in certain ways, but actually be able to use it as a tool for coaching opportunities, and to be able to correct behavior and certain patterns, without having to always default to a class 1 violation when there's certain circumstances that we're considering. So anyways, I just wanted to note that there's been very fruitful conversation around that, and I'm sure it's we're going to continue to find other areas in which we may want to consider that or not. And I did want to note, I believe it was in the, correct me if it was at the Miranda, I believe, discussion, that we held firm to not having a class 2 violation. There were some things that we're gonna go back and look at the language. And so anyways, I'll pass it to you, Captain, because I think you'll be a little more organized in terms of where we exactly left off. But I did want to just note the fruitful discussions that we've been having around the class 2 violation classifications, and being able to have the ability to consider those, depending on the type of MOR violation that we're looking at. I also want to welcome Marsha Peterson. How are you, dear? Always great to see you. Oh, there you go. We're barely getting started now, and I'm barely was just going to hand it to Captain Hubbard to pick us up where we left off. But wanted to welcome you, so that you just dropped in. Good evening. You're on mute. Marsha, you're on mute. And I shared with, and let me share a couple other announcements. Actually, I'm sorry, Captain, before we jump right into things, I want to share a couple of announcements with the public and with Miss Marsha as well, now that she is joining us. A while back, we had set a pretty ambitious goal to be meeting weekly, because of just the sheer number of these that we wanted to go through, and we also had commissioners that were terming out at that time, so we wanted to cover as many of these as possible. And I believe this was leading up into the winter holidays, and so and ever since then we've just been ripping and running and meeting every week and knocking things out. And so prior to us going live, the panel was having a discussion around the best way to sequence things moving forward. There's been times where we haven't had either a chance to fully review stuff, so we're reviewing things on the fly as we meet, or there's times where Captain Hubbard may need more time to actually work on some of the deliverables that we've been putting out. And frankly, as much as we're all championing through it, there's both Deacon Laos, myself, Captain Hubbard, folks that have been pushing through every weekend, and I know we're joined by the public. Marsha, you've been able to chime in and join us as well. I believe Kathy Leonard's been joining us as well. It's also taking a little bit of toll on us, to say the least, on meeting weekly, and so we want to be able to give ourselves some grace, also work a little more efficiently. And we discussed the proposal of moving this ad hoc back to twice a month and looking at sequencing it around the first and third Wednesdays. So I'll ask my chief of staff unless there's any questions or objections to that from the group. So Marsha, you're the other person joining us, so I'll ask you.
Can you hear me?
There you go. There you go. How you doing? Yep,
Oh, you
we
can
got
hear
you.
me. I'm good. How are you guys?
I'm well. I was actually just buying you time until you came on the mic. So yeah, given that announcement, how are you feeling about that? We're looking at going to the first and third Wednesdays for this group to keep it going.
That's good. Week is not sustainable. I think we've made a lot of progress, but I think even Deacon Lyle said last week he needed a break.
Absolutely, and we've all been feeling it. And then also, there's been discussions of we're going to kick off other ad hocs for this year as well. So it just makes sense to be able to space that out a bit.
Okay.
Awesome. All right. So, Chief of Staff, we'll make note of that, and we'll send reminders out. Excuse me, and new calendar invites. We'll update those as well too.
And a gentle reminder that we're not meeting next week as well, because Captain Hubbard will be out of town.
Yes, I remember last week.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you for that reminder.
Sure.
Excellent. So when we pick it back up on the 5th, that first week, that first Wednesday, at that point, it will have us right on track for first and third Wednesdays. So
Okay, I
sounds
will
good.
be out of the country that first week of no, is it? No, I take that back. It's the first week of April. Carry on. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Sounds good. Captain, how are you this evening?
Very well, thank you. Will
Excuse me.
screen. Let me see if this thing is actually working today. Can you see my screen?
Not yet. I don't. And I'm trying to get on my computer. So bear with me.
I see
Likely.
3141,
Okay,
31481.
got it. Yep, perfect.
Two.
Okay. So yeah, last week we had a lengthy discussion around really class one and class two, and we talked about at length the Fourth Amendment in particular. And I will get to what I came up with. Actually, it's very simple. I'll start first with Fifth and Sixth Amendment rights. This is a class one. We did talk about how the chief requested consideration for a class two section on this. We agreed as an ad hoc to leave it as class one only, but I'm sure when the chief does ultimately review this, then he'll want to readdress this and have a further discussion. I never talked to the chief personally about it, so I don't know the context for the question or the request, but I'm sure he has better anecdotes than I do. So anyway, we left it as a class one. And last week's definition that I provided was extremely lengthy, so I just narrowed it down to one's obligation to uphold constitutional protections. All members and employees shall uphold and protect the constitutional rights of individuals as guaranteed by the Fifth and Sixth Amendments of the U.S. Constitution. I left out the actual definition of what the Fifth and Sixth Amendments are. That can be found elsewhere. I just wanted to stick to like you need to uphold and protect it, period. Okay, and this, as a reminder, is a new section for us, so it's not yet defined or identified. And for those who don't remember, the Sixth Amendment is not currently part of our manual of rules, and we added it, so it's now Fifth and Sixth Amendment. Okay. 31448 is also class one, and we decided to combine it with 34228 because they had the same tenets for each, and we were confused. So rightfully so, we can expect officers to also be confused. So we wanted to combine it. So this is the failure to report misconduct when required. And I bolded the sections that I changed. So this is reporting violations of laws, ordinance, rules, or orders. Members and employees must report any violations of laws, of law, policy, or direct orders committed by other members or employees. So serious violations. So this is class ones or patterns of class twos. Violation that constitute a class one offense or a pattern of class two misconduct must be reported within 24 hours or as soon as practical. Reports must be made orally and in writing to a supervisor or the Internal Affairs Bureau. We changed this from we said orally in writing. We expect a phone call, but also it used to say memorandum, so we wanted to get rid of that. Now that we have email, email as a preferred method. For single occurrence class two violations, if a class two violation is not part of a pattern, members may address it through non-disciplinary corrective action when appropriate. If the violation is serious or egregious, it must be reported immediately to a supervisor, including the chief of police. The chain of command may be bypassed. So we added this in there because we wanted people to know the seriousness of it, and also where they can talk to anyone. They do not have to go through their immediate chain of command. For mandatory notifications, members and employees must notify an IAB commander by phone or email within 72 hours if they, so this is specific to them as the member, if they are named in a lawsuit, unless the city is also a party, are arrested in accordance with California Penal Code 834. So I got rid of all of the definitions of 834. I just left it very simple. It has to be an arrest per California Penal Code 834. have their commercial driver's license suspended or revoked, or are cited in lieu of arrest, excluding vehicle code infractions. So they, again, within any of these four, within 72 hours, they need to make notification to the IAB commander by phone and email. And then also, if they're served with a civil or administrative process related to their employment or alleging a manual of rules violation, or they learn that they're under investigation for a misdemeanor or felony. If a member cannot notify due to incarceration, hospitalization, or travel, their unit commander must ensure the report is submitted. I have never seen that before, so we shouldn't have any problems with timely submissions. So that's it. Nothing too shocking about that section, just combination. I think it's more clear. We've had a few cases recently where this is very relevant. It's not the notification itself, it's how the notification came in. So it's more of a technical issue that we found, but we have been able to mitigate from there. So I like it how it's reading now. Any questions on this section?
Yeah, it's certainly a lot more clear from what it was before. Can you scroll back up to the part where there you go, where it calls the single occurrence class 2? All right, so the only part that confused me was in the second bullet point where it says if the violation is serious or egregious, must be reported immediately. A serious and egregious class 2, at what point does that now bleed into now becoming a class 1? I guess when I read serious and egregious, I was like, oh, I thought class 1s were the serious and egregious ones. So you could have a serious and egregious class 2.
Yeah, I mean, sure. It's what the reason for that bullet point is. I don't want one to say, well, because it's not a class 1, I am not in a position to report. I want people to be empowered to report it, even if it's egregious. So I'll give you an example. Let's say that an officer is chronically falling asleep on duty. It's technically a class 2, but I would say that that's egregious enough to where one should immediately report it because of the officer and community safety implications attached to it. So that's an example. There are actually some harassment allegations that would actually be considered a class 2. To me, I mean, yeah, it should be elevated to a class 1, but at the end of the day, if it's just a class 2, I think that's egregious enough to where one should report it. Yeah.
But then it's also contingent on one making a determination of whether that's egregious, right? Because that becomes a little subjective. So can we strengthen that with some language of like, if there's any question? I mean, I don't know if it's like exactly the wordsmith, but I guess the idea being, if there's any question of whether it's serious or egregious, it must get reported. Like if there's any even a doubt in your mind that it may be, like, yep, then you have to report it. Or report it to a supervisor so they can help determine if it's egregious or not. I just wouldn't want it to be so subjective where, you know, one supervising officer would say, oh, it's not that serious, egregious, you know, and then another person to think otherwise, and, you know, and have there be a discrepancy of the way that's being reported.
So usually the word reasonable, reasonably considered egregious could maybe
Beautiful.
be put in there. A reasonable.
Violation
Mhm.
can be reasonably considered serious or egregious.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. The one problem is we're going to have an argument later over one feeling reasonably considered, as in if we're going to say later that yes, you should have reasonably considered this to be true, that means that the member now who actually reported it, albeit late, is actually being sustained for not reporting it sooner. You know what I mean? So it.
Well, again, you know, either it is a responsibility that should be taken seriously and therefore promptly reported, and not to be, you know, pondered over whether it is or isn't. I mean, we're asking officers basically to err on the side of reporting.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, no, I understand. I just know later it's going to be debated over what's reasonable. But I mean, I don't think we can avoid that argument either. So
Right,
uh,
right. And while we might want to anticipate arguments in um, opposition, it shouldn't deter us from putting this language in there. And if it is considered later through some review by your higher ups or the union or what have you, we'll take it into consideration then.
yeah, yeah. No, I understand. Yeah, that's fine. Great. Okay, I will make those changes. Let me just make sure I have my notes right, maybe by okay. The one good thing about having weekly meetings is I remember everything. Now, if we go to every other week, then I have to really make sure my notes are my
Well,
notes.
that's why we'll have the benefit of the recordings.
Yeah, okay. All right. I think the chair had to step away, so I'll just keep going here. I'm going to come back to gifts and gratuities because I do want input from everyone on that. I do want to talk about. Maybe did I just double? I think I double pasted that. Give me 1 second here. Right. Okay. All right. We last week we talked about in Fourth Amendment. So I changed it. I got rid of this. We'll have to come back and talk about this, but the intentional, unintentional has been removed, and I changed it to improper. So this section is a standalone section. Now reads improper search, seizure, or arrest. And the new definition is obligation to uphold Fourth Amendment protections. All members and employees shall uphold and protect the constitutional rights of individuals as guaranteed by the Fourth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. Members and employees shall conduct, and I know we talked about this also about the different definitions. So it's searches, seizures of property, detentions of persons, and arrests in accordance with the law department policy and established legal standard.
I gave away my book on the Constitution, but it's the right of the people to be secure in their papers, persons, and ooh,
Yeah.
against unreasonable searches and seizures.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So I know we had a talk about intentional versus unintentional.
We had a long talk about that.
Yeah. So we wanted to change it to improper, but as I look at this word, I just want to make sure that we're not watering down the severity of it by saying, because illegal is a strong word, but improper, it's like, more, it depends on how severe we want to make that. So I would just want to ensure that we're okay with improper, like covering, it could be up to illegal behavior also.
Well, I don't want it watered down. So the Fourth Amendment, do you have the language? I can pull it up. Because we certainly don't want to say something different than what it requires. Okay, let's see. A little bit slow on the uptake here. Hmm. Okay. Protects people from unreasonable government searches and seizures. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses. This is why I don't want to see. We shall conduct searches. That includes houses. Searches of persons and searches of houses are two different things. So why aren't we just using the language of the Fourth Amendment rather than trying to, and of course, shall conduct searches and seizures in accordance with the Fourth Amendment?
Mhm.
Yeah, because there's a lot under here where officers also go get warrants that are illegal. So why don't we just use the language of the Fourth Amendment rather than trying to characterize what the Fourth Amendment says? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. So members and employees shall ensure.
Well, the rights of the public has the right to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures.
I can say shall ensure that
That the rights of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. Yeah. And that's lifted right out of that is the Fourth Amendment. All members and employees shall uphold and protect the constitutional rights of the individual guaranteed by the Fourth Amendment. Members and employees shall conduct. No. Members and employees shall ensure. I want you to this second members shall ensure, yes, shall ensure that the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. So members and employees shall ensure the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. That's a quote from the Fourth Amendment. Oh, comma, after violated, and no warrants shall issue but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Yep. And that, sir, is the Fourth Amendment.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, sounds good to me. Trying to think if maybe instead of if I change improper to unreasonable, how do you feel about that?
Where are you changing it?
Well, if we're gonna up here, so the actual title performance of duty says improper, this is what we talked about last week. But if we want to take the definition of this, it's this whole protection is all about unreasonable.
Yeah, under the Fourth Amendment.
So if I let me just, I'll have everyone else weigh in on that, but
And reasonable search, seizure, detention, or arrest.
okay. Yeah, I mean it feels right to me. Just trying to think through it. If I guess it's the reason why, at least this was how it was explained to me, of why we had a different definition is because sometimes we hold officers accountable for this section, but the court of law does not, as in they have no problem with what the officer did.
Well, again, we don't stand in the shoes of a judge. We are just drafting a disciplinary matrix that follows the Constitution. Now, whether a court will look at the individual officer's actual engagement and determine whether or not it meets the standard, that's out of our hands. Whether it be preponderance of the evidence or the higher one. My brain's not working.
Yeah.
Beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yeah. Proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Okay. All right, great. I will we can come back to this in a couple weeks and see if anyone else wants to weigh in on it. So the other section of this, I don't know if you were part of this discussion because we were going to talk about it last week, but we ran out of time, is this section of gifts, gratuities, soliciting or accepting. So this is a new section, somewhat new. And maybe it'll be helpful if I go back to the original one. I'll talk about how I had some issues with it. So the original section for this is quite long. It is members and employees shall not use their authority or position, whether for him, herself, or another, and not otherwise available to them as a private person, to barter or solicit any goods or services, except with the intent to convert to private use any goods or services for financial gain or other benefit, to obtain or grant privileges or favors, or to avoid the consequences of an illegal or prohibited act for themselves or for others. Members and employees shall not use their authority to solicit or accept contributions for the department or for any other agency, organization, event, or cause without the express consent of the chief of police or designee. Disposition of an unsolicited item of value. Any member or employee who receives an unsolicited gift, gratuity, or in his her absence, a bureau deputy chief, or other item of value shall notify the assistant chief of police, or in her absence, a bureau deputy chief regarding the disposition of an item. If unavailable, prepare and forward a memorandum along with the item through the chain of command, documenting the circumstances of receipt. So the intention behind this, of course, is, Brian Hubbard as a police officer goes to Home Depot and he's just getting a bunch of free stuff, right? That's the intention behind this, to prevent me from doing that. And so the problem with this
Wait a minute.
is, yeah.
preventing you from getting free stuff that's available to the public?
No, not. It's like because of my status as a police officer, right? So I'm using
Oh,
that
when
as
you say free stuff, you mean that you're being given things.
yeah, that's
Ah,
right. That's right. Not stealing it. It's given, right? And let's say I'm exchanging it for like, hey, I promise to do more patrol in this area if you give me okay. where where the lines get blurred, of course, is members of the community want to give things to police officers. They have goods and like food and coffee or whatever it is, and it's not something that we desire. Like we go there because it's free. It's just like, hey, I want to give this to you because I appreciate you as a police officer, and then we in response say, no, we have a manual of rules section that does not allow us to accept gift gratuities from you, and people take offense to that. It's like there's some cultural issues with that. It's just, but it's also just a good gesture that sometimes the community does for us. So the idea was we want to have the severity in here. It's like you shall never leverage your position to gain anything that someone else would not get. However, we also want to value community policing and not to disrespect anyone who does want to give you a very nominal item, such as a cup of coffee or something very small. Not, you get what I'm saying, as just
well,
a
yes
gesture
and
from the
no,
community.
because um, giving a donut every day to an officer for free, or and yet that officer may get it, but another officer may not get it.
Yeah,
Um, you go to pay for your sandwich and they say, no, it's on us. Thank you
yeah,
for your service. Um, that if it's repetitive, it's
yeah,
no longer,
that's right.
it's understood that you can go there and get it for free lunch, where someone else may have to pay, some other officer may have to pay $15 for that sandwich.
That's right.
So that's where it becomes subjective whether or not this is an unsolicited gift or gratuity, as opposed to um, some sort of exchange of services or bartering or solicitation of some sort. So that's why it's hard to draw the line here, because yes, you do want to have good relations in the community, but that can mean different things for different people.
That's right. That's right.
So that's why you have to have a hard and fast rule.
Yeah.
So what is your question about whether or not this is solid or not?
Well, I have a new definition, and so I wanted you to see the old, and maybe we can talk about the new and see if there's room for movement here. Uh, so prohibited conduct, members and employees shall not use their authority or position, whether for personal benefit or on behalf of another, when such benefit would not otherwise be available to them as a private individual. Specifically, members and employees shall not solicit, accept, or barter for any goods, services, or other benefit based on their position, accept any goods or services for personal use where the intent is to convert them to private gain, seek or receive financial or material gain beyond their official compensation, grant or obtain privileges, favors, or preferential treatment in exchange for a gift or gratuity, use their position to avoid legal or administrative consequences for themselves or others. So here's a new section: community gifts and tokens of appreciation. To maintain public trust while recognizing community goodwill, members and employees may accept unsolicited gifts of nominal value, such as coffee, snacks, or meals provided at community policing events, only if there is no exception of preferential treatment or reciprocity expectation, excuse me. The gift is offered openly in a manner consistent with community engagement. The gift is not from a business or individual that has financial interest in police operations or decisions. Any offer of significant gifts, benefits, or favors shall be declined or already received, reported, or if already received, reported under section C, which there's not a lot of changes here. So basically, members and employees shall not use their position to solicit or accept contributions for the department or any other organization, event, or cause without the express written approvals of the chief of police or designee. If a member employee receives an unsolicited gift, gratuity, or item of value exceeding nominal value, they should immediately notify their immediate supervisor for disposition. And then if no commander is available, document receipt, disposition about and writing and submit it through the chain of command. So really what we're talking about is this is the new section here, but obviously, this could be a slippery path, but I was
Yeah.
hoping it's more clear on what I'm talking about here.
Well, what I see also is the potential for a repetitive contact with a community member.
Yeah.
And with the implication that it is in. So you guys have a problem with even the appearance of impropriety, and if you are going to be, say, some of you be repetitive visitors of a particular, Colonial Donuts on Lakeshore Avenue, and you.
Why are you using donut examples? That's twice now. Use it.
That's the only one I can. I run into officers in the donut shop.
Let's think of something else. Like, can we say coffee?
Okay. Well, if you don't gas up, you go into a 7-Eleven, and you always want a Sprite.
Yeah, there you go.
And they just say, "Oh, it's on us," that kind of thing. And you're always going to that same 7-Eleven, and that is beyond a community engagement. That's almost, again, that part about getting something that would not be something that I could go in and get on a repetitive basis for free.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and there's definitely a slippery slope there, and you're absolutely right, where perception is also important, because someone who is behind me who is paying for their item and then sees that, they're going to have a negative view of them. And I used to teach this block in the academy. It was more of an ethics discussion. And at the end of the day, I told the recruits, I said, this is a heart issue where what you're doing, as in, yeah, you might get that one business who wants to give back to the police department or just first responders in general. But if you find yourself then going back there hoping for that repetitive handout, then that is a you issue, not a them issue.
Right.
And that's where you need to avoid it. So
what is it? This is a new part, and your question is whether or not this puts them in a bind with the community. No, I think it could even be written a little bit stronger, that there should not be a repetitive contact with a community member or organization that would reasonably lead to the appearance of impropriety.
Let's see. This is going to be rough here. So it is not repetitive and not repetitive or leaves negative.
Or yes, a negative perception from the community or the appearance of impropriety on the part of the member.
Okay. Yeah, I'll clean that up, but it's not repetitive.
Or leave, not leaves. It is not repetitive or leave a negative perception from the community or the appearance of impropriety. A one-time thing is one thing, but if you're going there every week or 3 times a week.
Well, I mean, the thing is, and this is where I reverse engineer it. Now that we're trying to think about the outcome of, okay, potential discipline against an officer. So let's say you're now the chief looking at this after a community member says, hey, this officer went to 7-Eleven and the the manager gave an officer a soda and said, hey, thank you for your service. I want to make a complaint. So when we are now investigating this, we're going to ask them these questions like, is this the only time? Did that appearance leave a negative perception in the community? Was there an expectation of preferential treatment? You know, as in, did they ask you to do more patrol in response to the soda that they're giving you?
You know, there's a way to say no that would not offend a community member. Well, I thank you so much for acknowledging my service. It would be inappropriate for me to accept this, but thank you so very much.
Yeah,
I mean, you're not wearing the uniform to get freebies.
yeah, agreed. And that's ideally how it should occur, you know, but you know, I've been to places where it's like they almost feel insulted when I say no, like they're giving me a gift, and it's a cultural thing sometimes where it's like they're giving you a gift and you know, so what I tell officers in that situation is I would leave a very big tip that would equate to what the item would have cost, number one, but at least try, you know, don't just, you know, explain to people our policies. I don't know. It's tough. But also it's weird how like the reason why I put this in here also is sometimes it's advertised as in the chief of police will send out an email saying, hey, this cafe down the street wants to show their appreciation for National Law Enforcement Day. Stop by for a free lunch. And it's like, well,
Well, that's available to all officers
yeah,
equally. Because I can imagine in some instances, because we don't necessarily live in a colorblind society, that one racial group may receive those gratuities, but the others may not.
right, right,
So again, it's safer to err on the side of, you know, not losing your job or being written up for a freaking free soda pop.
yeah.
You know, why don't you put that leave a negative perception from the community in parentheses? Because I think that's the one that's probably the most concerning. But the appearance of impropriety is where you scoop up an officer who's in there every other day or every week, you know, taking the whole bucket of chicken and all the sides, you know.
Yeah,
It's a slippery side. I mean, I'd rather officers err on the side of caution
sure.
rather than see how far they can push the envelope.
Yeah,
Because I think really what the community wants more than anything else is for officers to just show up.
yeah, yeah. And that was our discussion before. Is
Right.
we don't want officers to be so fearful of this that they end up not going to any of these places where they would pay if, you know, because they're just out of fear. Like I don't want officers just sit in their car and have lunch. I think it's important that they go to local
No
businesses.
question. No question.
Yeah,
But this is the nature of the business they are in. Okay, that and they make enough Hollywood movies about graft that, you know, officers have to overcome maybe the general perception that the community may have that officers are on the take.
yeah,
Unfortunate.
yeah.
But they may be compensated highly enough that they, don't have to worry about, shouldn't worry about stuff like that.
No, we don't. It's again, it's just not an effort to not being insulting to the community member who does want to show appreciation.
Sure.
I gave this story when I was in training. I got this a letter, and inside the letter was a thank you card. It says, "Hey, thank you for everything you do," and it was a basketball card. And I was really confused by it. I was like, "What? I don't." And there was no like context to why it was a basketball card. But then I went and looked at this, and I didn't accept it. I wrote a letter to the chief and said, "Hey, this came to me via mail. Here's the good that was given to me, and I recommended that it be donated to our youth program." But it was just like it was a very weird. But I looked exactly at this policy. I'm like, I can't accept this, you know. So luckily, no one like ran into me later and said, "Hey, how'd you enjoy that basketball card that I gave you?" And then
Well,
I
for
was
all you
sorry.
know,
I gave
it had a value beyond its face value if you trade in, those sorts of things, those cards.
yeah,
But at the end of the day, you don't want officers going into Home Depot
yeah,
and getting things discounted that wouldn't ordinarily be discounted to the public.
that's right. Yeah. So I might clean I will clean this up before our next meeting, and then I'll come back to it because I do want to hear from others also.
Okay, fair enough. I'm certainly not a committee of one.
Oh, I have this twice. Get rid of all this. All right. Okay. Actually, that was all that I had for homework wise. So I think we were. We have not yet. We're just wrapping up the class one section here,
Mhm.
and we have not addressed these. So I was just going to go one by one. 31470. Okay, so this says. I know the chair wasn't feeling well, so I hope he's okay.
And I have to jump off at 7:15.
Okay.
He said he'll be right back. I do have a hard stop at 7. He does have ownership though to log off later.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Well, when he comes back, I'll talk about next steps here. But um, anyway, so we got it. We have not talked about this. So this is uses of privileged information. Members and employees are prohibited from using information not available to the public gained through their position as a law enforcement officer within the department to gain financial or other benefit for themselves or others. We see this with
Is this limited to finance, or is it, or other things as well?
yeah, it says or other benefit, and it's the benefit is harder to find, but I mean we have used this section for people who leak things to the media, confidential items, or if there's now that we have email, I mean, there's just a lot of sensitive information that just gets passed through emails and criminal intelligence and all in different things. And, things get leaked out of there. And it might not be for nefarious reasons, as in like assisting a criminal, let's say, but it just inappropriately was kind of sent outside of the walls of OPD. And this is where it's like, no, you are receiving this privileged information, you need to be responsible for it. So that's a simple example of where this section would be used.
So
Not a Yeah.
privileged privileged information is just what you got because you are a police officer. It's not necessarily confidential.
I mean, I would say, not necessarily. Yeah, I would say it doesn't have to necessarily be, or it doesn't have to necessarily be a crime. So we have also, you know, the criminal databases that we have access to. That's a different section, not here. So it's a little bit more beyond the privileged information. This is to me just anything that is specific only to OPD personnel. And I
Okay, you wouldn't have had
use
it,
that.
but for the fact that you are a member of the police department.
That's right. That's right.
I got it.
I'm not entirely sure why it's specific or why it says to gain a financial. I don't know if any examples of that. I would say it's just a general benefit for themselves or another. I think that's the crux of the argument though. Like someone can easily say, well, I didn't gain anything financially or there was no benefit. I did it just because. I don't know. But at the end of the day, it's like, well, someone may have benefit from it.
Well, is it like, it's not the stuff of whistleblowers, is it?
I mean, it could be. I mean, I'll give you maybe an
Or
example.
doesn't necessarily get any financial gain. They just feel like something is happening inside the department and it should be made known to the public.
Right. And yeah, well, yeah, and there's a debate over that. It's like, well, are you violating this section if let's say you leak it to the press versus we have a whistleblower
Protection.
protection, but also like we have a source for that within the city of Oakland. I mean, we have the inspector, I'm sorry, the city auditor that I can go through and say, hey, I think that, you know, OPD is doing X, Y, and Z, and they're not the press, and it's confidential.
Yeah, there's some redundancies in these in your matrix that you'd almost have to charge people with 2 and 3 and 4 things in order to make a cause of action. Members and employees are prohibited from using information not available to the public, gained through their position as a law enforcement officer or within the department to gain a financial or other benefit for themselves or another. It sounds more catch-all. You're saying you have some other very specific.
Yeah. So for example, and I think
How, how does that tie into the gifts and gratuities? One?
it does, and we're on to the new section. I can go
Yeah,
back.
we're in a different
Yeah.
section.
Okay. And I apologize, I got called. I had a work call and situation I had to manage.
No problem.
Real-time school-based violence, gang intervention. We got young people that have been at this on campus, or one of my violence interrupters has been on campus since 8 a.m. now doing a home visit, following up with one of his students, like, around the clock, unsung heroes of frontline
Yeah.
work.
Wow.
We need you though.
So here's an example of how there could be multiple. So this section, improper dissemination of computer information. Members of employees shall not disseminate information obtained from a departmental city computer without proper authorization. That's a little bit.
See, that's a little more nuanced.
It is.
So
It's a little
you got
outdated.
catch all, and then you if it's about a computer information, it's also this one. So if you don't get one, you can get them under the other.
And then this one is more severe, unauthorized use of electronic systems. This is where accessing department, city, county computer systems, databases, records, or other communication equipment unless authorized to do so by a competent authority. I mean, this is the need to know, right to know, and we have to get certified in this. Getting accessing a criminal database illegally, period, you can't do, even if it's not for personal gain.
There are certain codes that allow you, passwords that allow you into this.
Yeah, but it's also, you have to put a reason in there, and it's audited under my name. So
Okay.
so yeah, these each carry kind of different, they're all similar, but they all carry different weight and in different ways of looking at the case depending on the information. If anything, I would say this is kind of the most similar one to the one we just talked about, because it used to be when email wasn't new, but it was somewhat new to OPD at the time. It wasn't like I had my computer. I would go to a computer to check my email, and that was it. So I can see this being relevant where here I'm accessing this commonly shared computer and I'm pulling information and then distributing it in an unauthorized way.
Yeah, actually, that's I think the aim of this, without proper authorization, where the other one is for personal benefit. So you're not disseminating, what was the disclosing information? What was it?
And does the personal benefit carry a harsher penalty, I'd assume?
See, this one is using information for financial gain. The other is disseminating information without proper authorization. So this is all about personal benefit.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one is about gathering information without proper authorization or disseminating. That one was about disseminating.
Yeah.
So there must be one about gathering. And there must be another one about discussing. You guys have got a lot of pieces to a puzzle to make a cause of action against an officer. So I guess you can charge them with 5 or 6 different things. Something's going to stick. This is all about gaining financial or other benefit, using that information for financial or other benefit. The other one is disseminating without authority. So they're 2 different things.
Yeah. Yeah, an example for this is, let's say I receive notice that the Coliseum deal with the city is gonna, go through tomorrow, and I use that information to, buy into it, let's say, almost like insider trading, but because I received the information that was privileged to me for personal gain, in this section would apply.
Yeah, I'll go out and I'll buy a couple pieces of property around the Coliseum because, high tides lift all ships.
Yeah.
So hold on to it.
Right.
They'll want this piece of property one day to expand that parking lot.
So this is actually a more common section that we use than the others.
Okay.
Yeah, just because it's we have access to privileged information all the time, and when we get leaks, if you will, this is the section that we use to investigate those matters.
Okay.
So any recommended changes for this one?
No, that seems pretty straightforward to me.
Yeah.
Okay. I know you have to jump off in a few. Should we go back, just since the chair is back, talk about gifts and gratuities and talk about where we came?
Okay.
Okay. So Chair, I know we never really addressed this. I took a shot at updating gifts, gratuities, soliciting, or accepting, and just for the sake of time, because she has to jump off at 7:15. I wanted to talk about the main section that we changed here or recommended, which is section B. So as we left off, we have a very strict policy on gifts and gratuities, and rightfully so, but we wanted to give some leeway for, community engagement type opportunities, and this is the main section that was updated. So community gifts and tokens of appreciation, To maintain public trust while recognizing community goodwill, members and employees may accept unsolicited gifts of nominal value, coffee, snacks, or meals provided at community policing events only if it is not repetitive or leaves a negative perception from the community or the appearance of impropriety. There is no expectation of preferential treatment or reciprocity. The gift is offered openly in a manner consistent with the community engagement, or the gift is not a business or individual that has a financial interest in police operations or decisions. So that's the main section that was changed here.
And
Slip,
we added
yeah.
this, that's in yellow this evening.
Yeah, well, adding on to what was already written, yeah, we added something about it not being repetitive or leaving a negative impact from the perception from the community.
I love it. I love it. I think the repetitive piece was the one thing that I was worried about. Because if, you know, in the moment and in a one-off situation where somebody's just feeling so grateful that they want to like, oh, just take this piece of candy or just give me a hug or, you know, just feel that appreciation. You know, I think that was the spirit of it. We didn't want them to be cold. We want to take an opportunity for that to be actually be a trust building opportunity and kind of deepen relationships with community. But I was concerned that like, I know there's been controversy, for example, of like a particular coffee shop that may want to say, oh, law enforcement could have free coffee here because we just support our law enforcement indefinitely, right? And then next thing you know, all the law enforcement is getting coffee there, or at least, you know, a good handful all day long. And the community is like, hey, hold on, you guys just getting free coffee all day. And then some people started protesting the coffee shop, like you shouldn't give cops free coffee all day. And then it just became this, because of the repetitive nature of it, right? Versus a one-time, one-off like token of appreciation or something, you know. And I think that's where we could get into a little bit of trouble if the perception becomes like, oh well, OPD gets free coffee at this spot and they get free gas over here, or you know, whatever that might be. Just, you know, so yeah, anyhow, I like that. I guess all that to say that.
Okay. I'll format this a little better, and then when we come back in March, we can address it with the entire team. Okay, so this was the last thing that was on the list for homework wise. All of
Oh,
these.
no, we did the Fourth Amendment thing.
Oh yeah, I forgot that you jumped off there. Okay, so we agreed that we got rid of the unintentional intentional wording, put improper there, but we wanted to align it to the actual Fourth Amendment. So we just put unreasonable search, seizure, detention or arrest for the title, and elected to get rid of all of this and then actually literally take what the Fourth Amendment said. So the definition now is members and employees shall ensure the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized.
And that is the actual language
That's the
of the
actual
Fourth
language.
Amendment, rather than us monkeying around with trying to, you know, characterize it or, you know, what have you. Just say that's what the obligation is. And let the courts then decide whether or not, or an arbitrator will decide whether or not the officer violated, because that's the way the system works.
I like it. I like it. You kind of remove some of the ambiguity around it and just go straight referencing the exact Constitution itself, the Fourth Amendment. Okay, I like it. Okay.
Okay. So that took us through all the homework that I had until tonight. So then we were just gonna go chip away at, we only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 class 1 violations left. 4 really, because we already settled this one tonight. $328.53. So this is false reporting of illness or injury. Members and employees shall not feign illness or injury, falsely reporting themselves ill or otherwise attempt to deceive the department as to the condition of their health.
Yeah. I mean, that's truthful. That's an issue of truthfulness. So I don't have a problem with that.
Well, you bring up a good point though. So does this sustain case then sustain one for truthfulness?
And the truthfulness is a higher,
Yeah.
Right. Right.
so you would sustain up at that point.
So should it be, instead of false reporting, untruthful reporting? And that way, if you find that it was untruthful, that means that they didn't tell the truth, or false reporting is the same as not telling the truth in the way that you parlayed all of these different offenses.
I'm trying to think where that gray area is at, where it's like, I wasn't not telling the truth. I just didn't say, or I didn't falsely report it. I just didn't report all of it. Or yeah, trying to see which one does false or
Equate to
truth.
untruthful.
Yeah.
Because the untruthful is the more serious offense, right?
Oh yeah.
Because then you're knowingly, premeditatedly, like,
yeah.
lying.
So when you say not feign illness, shall not, it's really not a matter of feigning illness. It's lying about illness. Because feign means like, oh, my stomach really hurts, and I think I might be getting the flu. It's going around. And yet nothing is really happening, but they're feigning like they are sick. But really, is feigning, is that equivalent to untruthfulness? Does this fall under your untruthful category?
Can you falsely report something without being untruthful?
Yeah. Does it mean the same? Because you guys have a lot of little ambiguity and nuance to some of this stuff. Because shall not, I mean, false report themselves ill, I think, is lying. So is this treated like a lie and therefore treated very seriously? Can you get bounced?
Well, let's think of the common example, I guess, is I call in sick for work and then I'm out clubbing.
Right. And then there's that one.
But you weren't lying, because when you called in sick, you really were not feeling too well. Is that what being
Right.
not feign
Well,
illness is? Is just like you.
I mean, it's pretending, but like, is there anything that says that if I call in sick that I have to stay at home?
No, because I might have to go to the doctor.
Well, okay, or
I
I
might
have
have
to
to go to
go
the grocery
clubbing to
store.
sweat it out.
Might have to go to the grocery store and get the makings of chicken
Right.
soup.
Right.
But so to that point, then it's almost saying something that the employee shall not, partake in behavior that contradicts whatever statements they made or how they feel or something like that.
Yeah,
also
behavior consistent with that would be to go to the doctor or be at the grocery store getting orange juice, stuff can, or Advil or whatever NyQuil or whatever.
As long as it's not contradictory to whatever you're supposed to be feeling. Or
Yeah. I'm just curious, feigning illness or injury. Like I twisted my ankle. No, you didn't. We saw you out there playing. No, we saw you out at the club doing a line dance. Oh, I felt bad earlier in the day, but I just soaked it and now I'm feeling fine. I don't know what you do with something like this.
Yeah.
Falsely reporting an illness, and because I think you can be homesick, self-report you're sick, and only after the third day do you have to bring a doctor's slip saying, you're well enough to come back to work. I know that's what they used to have at the port when I
And-
worked there.
That's still accurate.
And my guess is when this was written, I mean, I don't know how long ago it was, but we probably didn't know as much or weren't as sensitive to like mental health needs, right? And if
Right. Right.
somebody had a hard day at work and wakes up and we want to be sensitive to the mental wellness of our officers, and somebody's just like, I don't feel good, like my stomach, I can't explain it. Whether it could be PTSD, it could be depression, it could be some type of symptom that they don't even know what it is that's hitting them at the time.
Right.
And then it turns out that like nothing was really physically wrong with them, right? Could it be argued that it's like, no, I wasn't falsely reporting this. I really felt this way, even though I don't know why I don't feel this way now, but I did at that time. Like I don't know. It's hard. Yeah.
It's a hard one. So, and plus, if you don't require a doctor's slip after, within 24 hours of someone saying they don't feel well, and not all people go to the doctor on the first day. Maybe they can't even get a doctor's appointment unless they go to the emergency room. So how does this show up, Captain?
Yeah. This usually there's some suspicions that are raised. Just it's not an isolated incident. It's like every Friday, someone calls in sick, and then what happens is supervisor we have done house checks before. But again, it's like just because they're not home doesn't mean that they're lying.
Right.
The more severe examples of this is someone who, says that they're sick and then there's video evidence of them not being sick. That's a very rare example, and it happened many years ago. But for the most part, it's like there's this pattern of a person just calling in sick.
I got you.
Very difficult to prove though, because again, I don't have to go to the doctor for them to tell me I feel sick. And then COVID really messed this up for us because we were almost encouraging people. It's like nobody wants to be infected. So even if you get the slightest inclination that you might be sick, you stay home. Don't you dare come in.
Yeah.
And again, I've been part of management. I feel like my employees post-COVID have weaponized that, right? Like, oh, I feel a little itch. I need to stay home. I want to keep, others in consideration. And again, it's like, it's not truthfulness at that point. Maybe they're embellishing a little bit, but like, can you really get somebody embarrassed in trouble or discipline somebody for like, being a big baby too, I don't know. Everybody has different degrees of thresholds of pain and of tolerance and stuff too, right? I mean, if somebody doesn't feel good and not up to it, I don't know. This is a tough one. I'm thinking about, LeBron James just passed on the All-Star game and he was fine. And yeah, he has a little bit of ankle injury, but like by all accounts, he was fine. He could have played, right? But he just chose not to, and he wasn't feeling well that day, right? And it's just like,
he's a human being, and
you can't really,
and
like,
he knows his body and how it moves. It's like if I start feeling my throat closing and I gargle with some home remedy, warm water and salt, and it doesn't feel better and I feel a little feverish, no doctor. I don't have to go to the doctor to know that I'm catching the flu or a cold.
Yeah.
So this is on your honor, and it would have to be in your face, knowing that this is a feigned injury or feigned illness. So
And to our original point, it almost feels like you kind of got to take, like you said, honor system, take a word for it for that first day. But then once it becomes, if you notice, it becomes a pattern or something like that, then at
Yeah.
that point, it's actually becoming a truthfulness matter. It's no longer, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you delineate between the two, or it just confuses things. I
I
understand
mean,
what they're trying. Clearly, I understand what they're trying to say here, right? But
I do, but again,
Sorry.
not all things can be easily detected, and you are going to have to rely on the honesty. That's why I asked you, is this all about truthfulness? And if proven so, or there's a pattern of it that you can establish, then that goes to something higher, which is the truthfulness standard that, you know, can get you bounced out. So I've got to go, guys.
have a
So
great night.
I will see you not next week because we're off, but the next week, right?
correct. We'll
Okay.
send out. I'll have Micah send out reminders too. But instead of doing every other, we're gonna stick to the first and third
And
Wednesday.
third.
Yep.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Always great seeing you. Thanks for holding it down for me earlier.
All
Appreciate
right,
you.
no problem. Bye-bye.
So I guess my closing thought on this is if we were to sustain someone for this section, I don't see how we can avoid truthfulness sustained also.
Yeah.
I just don't see it. I mean, the only maybe possibility was someone saying, well, I thought I was sick at the time. It turns out I was okay. But then it's like, well, that's not really false reporting because you did feel sick at the time. So to me, it's like if you get caught on this, you're gonna get caught for truthfulness.
Exactly. Yeah. Because it's so, again, like I think of an employee that like calls out sick one morning saying, hey, I'm not feeling good because of COVID. I got a little itch in my throat. And then the next day they're at work and they're like, well, I slept it off. I took a COVID test. I feel better. And in my mind, I might be like, ooh, you little rascal. But I just, I got to take your word for it. Right. But to the point, though, if there's a pattern or if you end up actually getting caught in that where it's really a blatant lie in that regard, then at that point, it's a truthfulness matter. And the discipline will follow the truthfulness violation, right? I mean, because it's a more serious violation.
Yeah, I mean it just automatically will,
So does that mean this doesn't need to be in here, or like where does that land us? But then it also feels like this is pretty self-explanatory. Like I wouldn't feel good taking this out, right? I mean, post reporting.
So the one reason why I like this to be in here is because we have a sick leave balance that we can use. So in a way, you are deceiving the city financially, number one. But also, like, let's take the more severe is, let's say I claim an on-duty injury, or I can get then compensation from the state of California workers' comp. That is a criminal thing that should be investigated. So I like this as a standalone section because I would do it's not just me deciding whether you were truthful or not. Truthful is whether you are just financially deceiving the city or even from the state. And it's much more severe where I would be investigating this. Yeah.
All right.
So I argue not to change this section. I'm okay with it as is. Okay, 384.98. Is it just us, or we're gonna just keep going? Just you and I?
Where are we at? Let's see. Go back to that list real quick.
So we're 3 away, I think, for the.
Well, I'll tell you this much: if we call it 30 minutes early, somebody's gonna have to find this recording to call us quitters, man.
Yeah.
Let me see. All right. So these are the last of the class 1 violations that we have not yet covered.
I think it's worth us combing through the list one more time, but I'm pretty sure the one that I had up here is all done. But people have changed, time has passed, so maybe us looking at one thing influences the other. So I do want to finish with these four, like put them in that above list of things we already addressed, and maybe go through each one just to make sure. And then I like the idea of submitting the class ones as is, just as a progress report from us, and then before we move on to the class twos.
Okay. Yeah, no doubt. I actually think we should also, in going back to see all of the class ones that we covered, do one last kind of comb through to see if there's any other class two considerations that we should have for any of the
Sure.
other violations. Just to do one last, pass through, I think would be good. And then looking at the last three that we have, is there anything that maybe you could provide to us ahead of the fifth? So that we could just jump right into a discussion ahead of time, or do you think it's going to warrant a discussion first before we even jump into this? Or, you know what I'm saying? Like, does it make sense to send us anything ahead of time?
Yeah, I can certainly send you everything that we talked about tonight, including the no changes to this. These three, I would say, are not too controversial. I mean, we talked about refusal to accept and refer a complaint, more of the unintentional side. This is the intentional, which to me is very clear. Retaliation and accountability supervisors. I mean, that could be, just something. I don't think will change much there, but maybe build it more. I would say for this one, maybe I have to probably align it with the city policy to make sure there's nothing archaic in our current language, and that might be worth me putting out ahead of time for people to review.
Okay. Yeah, let's do that then. Is that the retaliation one that's on?
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah,
398.
if there is anything that you think in aligning it with the city policy that you want to update and send ahead of time, that'll be great. Otherwise, what we could do is plan on jumping into the remaining remaining three that we have on this list. And I think, given that it doesn't seem to be too controversial, then I think for the next meeting we'll be able to get through those three and then go through and then go double back and then look through the whole list of level ones. Is that what you'd like to do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sounds like a plan.
Excellent. Perfect. And then once we get to that point, then we could decide next steps on all these
Yeah.
class two. Because I understand my guess is there's a lot more class two violations.
Yeah, but because they're class twos, as you experience, there's not a lot to talk about because we're looking at these from the lens of a supervisor being able to handle that at his or her level informally. But even if it's an allegation from a community member, the discipline is not as severe, so it gives the chief and the discipline committee a lot of latitude on best ways of handling it.
Great.
Yeah.
All right. Cool.
Okay, sounds like a plan. Now that I have 2
Alrighty.
weeks to get this done, I can make it good.
Nice. Nice. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love seeing you 3-4 times a month, 6 times even. But I think it'll be a good pace for all of us. It'll help us work more efficiently and also, get in some of our health and wellness as well too.
Yeah, thank you for that.
I've been battling this cough for the last 3 days and I can't seem to get rid of it, man. So
Hope you're okay. Yeah, get some rest.
absolutely. Well, appreciate it. And let me just do one last check. Yep, no chat, nobody in the comments. All right, we'll call this meeting at 7:30 and we'll reconvene first week of March. And from there, we'll be going first and third Wednesdays. And I'll have Chief of Staff put out reminders to our panel and public.
Great.
Thank
Thanks
you,
so much.
everyone, and have a good night.
Take care.
You too.